This is Keep Up. I'm your host, Cynthia Dill. It's Friday, May 15th, 2026. I'm in my Cape Elizabeth studio. It's been a while, and it's good to be back. I've been busy with, with life and with work, and it's exciting times. Voting has started here in Maine, the Pine Tree State, and anyone paying attention knows that it's big primary season. And I think the news here for today's show is that for the first time in my life, have a sign out front for a Republican candidate for governor, uh, Jonathan Bush, which is kind of interesting because I'm not even sure I'm going to vote for him yet, but he's definitely going to be either my number one or my number two in Maine's ranked choice voting. And that, I mean, I've come a long way, or politics is out of whack. And I think it might be both. But what's interesting to me is if you think about the Democratic primary here in Maine, we have a second congressional seat open, and the Republican frontrunner is 8-year, two-term Republican Governor Paula Page, and it seems like it's going red. He is very popular. He won 2 statewide elections, as I just mentioned, and he's got the full backing of the Trump administration. In fact, Vice President JD Vance was just in Bangor yesterday. Uh, you know, obviously campaigning for Republicans and the Trump administration, but there really to get Paula Page on the stage and um, just send a message that he's their guy. So in the second congressional district, running against Paula Page is Matt Dunlap and also Joe Baldacci. Those are the 2 Democrats in the primary. And Matt Dunlap and I go back because in 2012, he and I were both running for U.S. Senate here in Maine in a primary. It was the year that Olympia Snowe resigned. When we got into the race, Olympia Snowe was the Republican who we expected to run against and lose. And so the Democratic primary was just sort of a fun thing for any, Democrat who was kind of bored and had aspirations to engage in, because it gave you a chance to be on the national stage, to, sharpen your debate skills. But no one really expected to beat Olympia Snowe. And then she dropped out. And Angus King ran as an independent, because he was going to bridge the divide between Republicans and Democrats. Well, look how good that turned out. But in this Democratic primary, I beat Matt Dunlap in the primary as the most, I guess, progressive candidate. Yes, I was still from Cape Elizabeth, still a white woman, and won a Democratic primary. Fast forward now to today, May 15th, 2026, and I have a sign out front for Jonathan Bush, who's a Republican, one of 8 running in a primary. And all of the 8 Republican candidates, with the exception of, I think Wessels is a good guy, but in my view, he doesn't have what it takes to be governor. And David Jones also is a very good guy, but I'm not sure but for the most part, every Republican candidate is quite impressive. There's nobody offensive. There's no fringe element up there. It's not a MAGA, beauty pageant in any sense of the word. On the Democratic side, there's basically a cast of characters that we've seen around Maine politics for a really long time. Good people. My number one would be Hannah Pingree. She's the daughter of Shelley Pingree. She served in the House of Representatives when I was in the House. She was the Speaker of the House. She also helped me as a candidate early on, helped recruit me, and then provided help, to get me into the House. So I'm not saying I'm repaying her. This isn't sort of a payback, but I just have a lot of respect, and I think she's great. She knows so many people. She's very, very smart, and she's a nice, decent person. You just like being around her because she's funny and kind-hearted, and just brings people together. So she has that going for her, but what she has going against her, as far as I'm concerned, is she's just too tied to the political, the machine here in Maine. And, I'm so, like, scared about the state, frankly. I mean, just paying attention to state and local politics, it's almost like we're in Alice in Wonderland, because for a while, the state of Maine was just, like, kinda crashing and burning, and there was some hope on the horizon nationally when Trump was first elected, I mean, everything kind of took off, right? We came back from the COVID and came back from, some of the Biden administration policies. That was very short-lived. So people like me in Maine, looking for who to vote for, it's like there's no party that really addresses our concerns. The Republicans in Washington are totally blowing it. They're not fiscally conservative. We have a debt that's just going, out just so far out of space that we can't even get it. Even, you know, the Hail Mary project would have a hard time getting so far out to get this debt under control. Uh, the war in Iran, I mean, so the Strait of Hormuz is, as far as I, there's not a lot of traffic going in and out of there. Who would have thought that the United States military couldn't quickly take care of Iran? Well, we're seeing in front of our very eyes that it can't. And suddenly now the United States is the highest exporter of oil. And we're on the cusp of maybe running out of some of these massive reserves. So what's this going to do to policy here in the United States? I'm sure we're going to probably end up drilling. Inflation, I think I read that inflation is almost 4%. Interest rates are going up. I mean, Trump's approval rating is in the toilet on the economy. The one thing that the Republicans run on is their ability to manage the economy. And that's not happening at the national level. I mean, the tariffs are wreaking havoc. Sure, if you have money in the stock market, hopefully the acceleration on these investments, it seems a little bit like a bubble in AI space and, the latest version of Bitcoin, whatever it is, ZCash, the newest fake money, internet money that people are making a gazillion dollars on blockchain. The latest thing is taking off. People who worked for OpenAI and like Anthropology and some of these other AI companies are becoming billionaires just in a very short amount of time. So there's a certain sector that's doing really, really well nationally, but otherwise the economy stinks. Here in Maine, under the Democrats, it's even worse. It's even worse. So here in the state, we actually have a field of Republicans who are attractive because of their business, acumen and also just executive functioning. And the reason why Jonathan Bush is on my list of top, my top favorites going into ranked choice voting is because he's really the only candidate that has the kind of business experience in the healthcare space. He was a co-founder of a health care business. It morphed from one thing into another, but it ended up being a large success that created, I forget the number he boasts about. Is it 1,500 jobs, 8,000 jobs? I forget the number, but it's a large number of jobs up in Belfast in the mid-coast. And he had to deal with the market, which, a lot of people don't realize how much we are dependent on people on Wall Street. And, obviously they're at home now in the Hamptons doing their Wall Street business remotely, but, you know, the, uh, the market and these gigantic investments and this securitization and the just the finance baby. So Jonathan Bush is really the only candidate that was in a healthcare business that had to interface with the government and interface with the markets, and he was successful in creating jobs and managing a budget. And healthcare is the biggest driver in Maine's economy, right? Healthcare is the biggest cost for most of Maine's families. Healthcare is like everything for a lot of businesses because it's make or break. And now we have just so many benefits that are mandated under the Democrats. So the economy in Maine has not been managed well. We've like doubled the state budget. I mean, it's hard to believe that we went from, I think, like 6 or 7 billion. And then in 8 years now, it's up to $12 billion state budget. So it's basically turned into a jobs program, right? For Democrats, it's all about protecting teachers' jobs. It's about protecting state employee jobs. It's about creating more and more and more bureaucratic jobs that go nowhere. And there's been so much fraud uncovered, right? Everybody thought, oh, Medicaid, it sounds like such a simple and obvious solution. Expand Medicaid. We're going to get all this money from the federal government. So where could things go wrong? Well, things go wrong when all this money comes in and it's not accounted for and handed out like candy to nonprofits that have, obviously with very little due diligence. And we're getting taken for a ride. And if you're a family like mine, it's May 15th. Well, just a month ago, you paid taxes again. You just paid your taxes and you're paying your quarterly taxes again. And you're writing these checks and you're thinking, what am I getting in return for this investment? And that's what we hear from Democrats in the state. Oh, they've made so much investment in education. They've invested so much in housing. You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like you've wasted a lot of money. That's like saying, like you invested with, I don't know, what are some of these scandals on Wall Street? Bernie Madoff, like, oh, he invested a lot of people's money too, and they got like 0. And that's what we're getting here on our return. 55% of education is being paid for by the state. Oh, isn't that great? That's like more per student than ever before, and yet test scores are worse than ever. We're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to our students who can't read or add, but they know that you could be born in the wrong body, and they know all about trans because that's the agenda of the Democrats. Yeah, and we invested a lot in housing, like what, a gazillion dollars. An audit of the housing agency, I'm sure, is going to be the housing authority. I mean, I thought it was I thought it was a stunt when Bruce Poliquin became the treasurer for the state of Maine and audited Maine housing. I thought it was just his way of being sort of like Doge like. But right now, I would be fully on board because they talk. I don't know where this money is going, but we have not solved our housing crisis. And there's no opportunity for families to get in the housing market, even though the market is like going out of control. Every opportunity to get in the housing market has been provided by Democrats to rich people and developers who get these projects, get these tax breaks. And for what? They build these cement blocks essentially that are very small, without garage space, 1 or 2 bedrooms. So like that's not the American family that we want populating our towns and our schools, right? We want families to move here that can comfortably house a couple of kids, maybe, 2 parents and a couple of kids. Is that too much to ask? But that's not the housing we get. We get these box structures, for profit, Section 8, low income housing because it's all about providing benefits. So that investment, 0 return. Investing in democracy, right? We spend all this money creating all these bureaucracies to have clean elections, right? So we can have public funding of campaigns. And the goal was that the sales pitch was that, well, if we invest in this clean election system, if we take the tax dollars, those checks that I just wrote, if we take that money and we pay somebody up in Augusta to, scan reports and hand out checks to candidates, then we won't have dark money. Well, you know, the dark money has exploded in the state. Every campaign is financed by out of state millionaires and billionaires. And it's not just the Republicans. Okay. The Democrats are fully equipped with, well paid, well heeled lobbyists for every issue that's on their agenda, whether it's the Alphabet Club, whether it's the climate, mafia. I mean, it's all well paid for. And because of PACs. So we have clean elections, this huge bureaucracy that costs like millions of dollars of the state budget, funding people's campaigns so they aren't influenced by dark money, but then allowing them to start leadership PACs so they can fundraise. So crazy. And ranked choice voting, supposedly ranked choice voting is going to like help eliminate tribalism, right? Wasn't that one of the pitches? Is that somehow with ranked choice voting, there won't be these bitterly fought political races because everybody will have to sort of, trade shells and collaborate and figure out a scheme on how they're going to rig the system to get ahead in ranked choice voting. And it hasn't worked. We see tribalism more than ever. We have all the Democrats who debate one another and listen to one another and are on all the algorithms to feed their messages to Democrats. And we have all the Republicans in their own media bubble, with their own candidate debates. And the two never cross paths. So if you're somebody like myself who had been a lifelong Democrat who's now unenrolled, and you have some favorites. My favorites on the Republican side, like I said, are Jonathan Bush and Ben Midgley. Those are my 2. I don't know who's 1 and who's 2, but those are the top 2. And the Ben Midgley is, I think, probably more electable in the 2nd congressional district because his story is very compelling, and he's not like a traditional Republican. Bush, of course, is connected with directly with the Bush, dynasty in American politics. I mean, he's direct lines to President H.W. and cousin W. So he's, he's part of that clan, but he definitely marches to the beat of his own drum. He is not he's not W, that's for sure. And he's very sharp, but I don't know that his somewhat preppy uh, pedigree is going to play well in the 2nd congressional district. It might. I don't know because he does have this jobs very uh, respectful, hard evidence of being an executive, creating jobs, interfacing with government, managing a budget. But we'll see. We'll see. Midgley, I think, is a little bit more. His stories from rags to riches is impressive, and he has no political baggage, no real skeletons in the closet as far as we can tell. And on the Democratic side, I like Hannah Pingree, as I mentioned. Uh, but I think the answer is not to have, for me, to have to pick between going into a Republican primary or or not going into the primary, but getting the ballot of the Republican candidates in the primary or getting the ballot of the Democrats in the primary. It should be a jungle primary. That's my point. Talk about burying the lead. If we had a jungle primary, which is that all of the candidates who meet the eligibility requirements would appear on one ballot and then you'd rank them. So I could include in my list of preferred candidates my my top 3. Uh, Jonathan Bush, Ben Midgley, and Hannah Pingree. Whereas right now I have to pick in one or the other. And so I think that's I think that's the direction that the state should go in. And I think Republicans really, I hope, get elected. But I haven't heard from a lot of Republicans campaigning. And I'm one of the unenrolled people who are active primary voters. So it concerns me a little bit because the Republicans can't beat the Democrats without the help of independents. It's just the way the numbers are. So I don't know. I hope there's a strong enough campaign to win because we need something new in Maine. It's not working. The economy's not working. Our education system is failing. We've gone way overboard on this green initiative. I mean, in Cape Elizabeth, our landfill had been, it's been covered over now for decades, and it was just this beautiful green space in the middle of our town, kind of public space where we have the transfer station, we have a swap shop, we have an ice skating rink, and then we have this big green space that was the landfill, but it was pretty and it was just green and nice, and it was mowed. Well, now it has just all this. It's not just the solar panels, it's all the other infrastructure around it. They have to it just created this gigantic construction site. It's such an eyesore. It it's I don't know, it's nothing. It solves no problems. Like, nobody in Cape Elizabeth is better off because we have this little experiment out, on our public land. It's virtue signaling, and that's what we've been just getting so much of out of Augusta. And, people think, "Oh, I've been beating this drum on the trans issue," or like everything is always somehow circles back to trans, this poor, marginalized community that is made up of people like Sarah McBride and Caitlyn Jenner. Uh, well, just today, I want to finish up the podcast with a tribute to Saul Grover. Anyone who follows the issue of women's rights being really erased as a result of the gender identity mania that has swept the world without any real conversation about its impact on women's rights. So, Saul Grover, she's been fighting the gender ideology battle in Australia. Saul Grover, about 5 years ago, started an all girls app called Giggle Girls. And it was a place, a digital place for women and girls to connect about all kinds of things, important things like business, jobs, and fun things like trips and cooking and makeup and dating, medical issues, just a hangout for girls. Well, a man who calls himself Roxanne Tickle joined the app and then got kicked out because he's a man. So this man, Roxanne Tickle, sued Giggle Girls for discrimination. So, like, it seems like a cosmic irony of some sort that the case is called Tickle v. Giggle because Roxanne Tickle, the man, sued Giggle Girls for discrimination because he identified as a woman and was excluded in an all women's club. And it's been now 5 years. Saul Grover is the founder of the company, and she's held firm. And throughout the process, she has been like, the courts insisted that she refer to Roxanne Tickle as he, and Saul Grover refused. And ultimately, the Human Rights Commission level found Saul Grover guilty of discrimination, fined her $10,000. She appealed. The appeal has been going on for years. Since then, Saul Grover has given birth to a child, a girl, who's now like almost 4 years old. And just this week, just today, earlier today, England, Australian time, a three-panel federal court upheld the finding that she discriminated against this man, Roxanne Tickle, on the basis of his gender identity as a woman. So you think that that can't happen? It can happen. So men who identify as women in Australia have more rights than women. So even though tomorrow when we wake up, he is still going to be a man. He He's still gonna have XY chromosomes. He's still gonna have all the attributes of a man, except that he's won his case for discrimination. Um, and it could happen here because people are indoctrinated with this gender ideology. They have been taught it in the schools. They have been fed it by the Democratic Party. It's been, you know, from on high, the rock stars of the movement for uh, equality, marriage equality, have embraced this issue in large part because of the fundraising and keeping the movement alive. They've put their rock stars out front. Mary Bonato, the lawyer who won the marriage equality case, is now the face of the so-called trans campaign here in Maine. And really deep down, it's really just about discriminating against women. And so we have to keep fighting this battle, and Republicans have to be elected because part of their platform here in the state, part of their campaign is to repeal gender identity laws, which is the only thing that is going to rid our state of this rot that allows for, I mean, we see, so it's cute, in Tickle v. Giggle, it seems kind of cute, like, oh, this trans guy. If you see him though, he's no cutie pie, let me put it that way. He Wow. Oh gosh, just thinking about him made me lose my train of thought. Oh, it's cute because the name, and it's a minor $20,000 fine, and $100,000 in attorney's fees is what Saul Grover had to pay. But that's a lot, but it's not, you know. But here in the state of Maine, the extremes of these laws, right? Carrying out this gender identity to its extreme. Okay, so Roxanne Tickle, you're allowed to go on the girls, Giggle Girls app now. Okay, you won. You get to be that guy who invades women's spaces and probably ruins the business. So good for you. Okay, that's a little different than though its application here in the state of Maine, where because a guy like Roxanne Tickle could identify as a woman and then have access in prison to the women's facility so that men who are like in my case that I've talked about on the show involving the Maine Correctional Center, there's a man, 310-pound man, who was convicted of murdering his parents and killing his dog, who gets to be locked in with, have to share a bathroom and shower and bunk with women who are like less than half his weight in there for possessing drugs. That's the extreme. And guess what? This guy who murdered his parents and now identifies as a woman just so he can have access to girls, and he knows that this is a system that can be rigged, and he's got it figured out, right? He's it's like a shark in a tank full of minnows. It's a playground for a predator, and he's got it figured out, and he's got the law about gender identity to protect him. And it's the Republicans who want to repeal that law, and it's the Democrats who still stand firm behind it. They think that somehow gender identity is something they should carry to the grave, even though, like I said, when gender identity was added to the Maine statutes, like way back in 2019 for the first time, really under the cover of darkness, in a kind of political deal, don't make it don't don't make any waves. We're just going to say that this is a clarification of the Maine Human Rights Act and slip it in as a protected status, and then just chip away, and permeate every nook and cranny of the law with gender identity. And that's what we have. And it's criminal. It's criminal, the results. Girls are being discriminated against. They're being robbed of athletic opportunities, robbed of medals, being shamed into having to change and share private spaces with boys. Women are being discriminated against, silenced, harassed, and in the case of prisons, forced to be with violent predators because of this bending the knee to gender ideology. And it's the Democrats who are beholden to these special interest groups who just march to, whatever marching orders come out from GLAD Law or, ACLU, uh, the Human Rights Campaign. They're all complicit in this campaign to just indoctrinate our youth about gender ideology has as a premise a false premise that sex can change, right? That's the thing. That's where the separation is between being gay, lesbian, bi, and being trans, is that, um, you know, being gay and having same sex attraction is about your feelings, about loving another person. Gay marriage was about saying that the state has to bless contracts between two loving people, regardless of their sex, because it's about, you know, um, about love and a commitment to one another, caring one another. And the state is not in the business of picking and choosing who can contract to take care of one another and for life, right? Until death do them part, or ill sickness and in health. I mean, that's an important commitment we want to encourage society to make, regardless of sex. Trans is not that. Okay, trans is not that at all. Trans is like you have to believe that sex can change, and that's a false belief. So, in order to support this, kids could be born in the wrong body, or trans women are women. You have to have a belief that sex is irrelevant, that biological sex is irrelevant, that sex can change, that it's mutable, and that just by sheer will, one can change their sex. And that's an ideology, and that's the ideology that has been taught by organizations like Planned Parenthood who contract with public schools here in Maine. That's the ideology that is taught in all the schools by all the teachers who went through college and were taught in their health and gender studies class that, yeah, this is the way it is. This is the next marginalized community that needs rescuing by the left, is these trans kids and these trans identified men. And it really just mostly boils down to, though, that it's about the men. It's about men who just um, insist on invading women's spaces and expecting society to place their feelings, their subjective beliefs about their identity above the reality, the rights, the privacy, the safety of women. And it's just something that is so dangerous. It's so dangerous. It's more extreme than any. Okay, you talk about, Islam extremists when it comes to gender. Some, they have to wear the burqa and all that. Some people think that's like just so extreme. Genital mutilation, right? That was a big concern that was raised by Democrats when I was in the legislature. That we well, this trans thing is just as extreme. It's so extreme. It's a cult, and people are finally waking up, and we have people who are detransitioning and realizing that they were sold a bill of goods, and that we have medical professionals coming forth that saying that, wow, this is bad. But in Maine, the damage is like largely done. We have gender affirming care as as a right. It's covered by Medicare, our Maine's version of Medicaid. You can't sue the providers of gender affirming care have legal immunity under Maine law. I mean, it's just crazy. They've elevated gender affirming care to abortion. So now we're because they push this narrative that, these men who claim to be women are just the same as women and their needs to have their surgery and their hormones, or maybe not, are the same as a woman who has a pregnancy with a you know, that needs to be terminated for very, very challenging and difficult reasons. It's absurd. So, interesting political times here in Maine. I've got a sign out front for Jonathan Bush, a Republican. I used to be the Senate candidate. I also have a sign for Valerie Adams, who's running as a Democrat in a primary against Jackie Sartoris. And the only reason why I have Valerie Adams sign out front is because Stephanie Anderson, the Republican district attorney for 28 years, is going to run against Jackie Sartoris if Jackie wins the primary. So Stephanie is working to help Valerie win the Democratic primary. But if Valerie doesn't, then Stephanie, the former Republican, now independent, is going to run for district attorney, and I am going to be her treasurer. So it's a small world. But I'm glad my Bush sign is out front because it is a small world, and when it comes down to it, it's about community. And I did have the great pleasure of meeting Mrs. Jonathan Bush, Faye, and she's lovely, very, very impressive also, and also connected at a high level with the healthcare space and business. And they have two little kids who ride the bus occasionally right past my house to go to school. So I want the kids to see that, their dad's supported here in town. So, because that's what we do here in Maine. We take care of one another. Uh, Republican or Democrat, I think. I mean, there's really the job for everyone in every political party is to fight the extremes within. So for me, I have no ability to influence the Democratic Party. That is perfectly clear. They don't want my vote. They're not interested in my perspective. And when I say I mean people like me, and that they're going to characterize me as a Karen because they put everyone in boxes, and it, I don't care. I'm done. I'm done with the Democrats. And I think I might have a better chance at influencing, people who are open to ideas, and whether it be Republican or Democrat. So Jonathan Bush, Ben Midgley, those are my top two. Uh, but I'm helping a Democrat in a primary too. Purple, I guess. Purple's the state. Purple's in. And that's it. This is Cynthia Dill.